Toni McCann kicking things off here, trailgating, UTMB. How are you feeling before your 100K debut on Friday?
Well, right now I'm feeling very calm, but I can guarantee you that is not going to last throughout the week. So I'm embracing the calm right now. Nervous, excited, curious, all the emotions.
Yeah. You are a South African living in France. Do you get caught up in the energy of summer season around here? I know you said an hour and 20 minutes away from Chamonix proper, so maybe you're a little bit removed from the chaos of the training camps and stuff, but what is that like?
Social media makes everything so accessible, so I always know when someone's around, which makes me want to come and join. But it's pretty easy to escape where we are. I think I live quite close to Les Aravis, which is a much more wild mountain range, a lot less summer tourism. In winter, there's a lot of amazing ski resorts there, but in summer, the hiking's amazing, but it's not as popular as somewhere like Cham. So I can kind of remove myself from that and stick my head down and get focused in training.
And you're still close enough to come do the reconnaissance laps. Maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit. You were one of the stories of the 2023 UTMB. You won OCC, a spectacular performance. It was your third in a row, going 14th, 5th, and then 1st in 3 OCCs. Talk about that 3-year project with OCC and what makes 2024 the right time to step up in distance.
Wow. I guess it's just it was a story of learning, I guess. That first year that I done it, I just had no idea what I was getting myself into. It was the first time I'd run a 50K. I was very new to the European racing scene still. And I guess it was just a big step up in learning. I'd never run more than, I think, 3 hours. Which, my training hasn't changed much since then. I guess I've just learned and figured out how to race better and smarter. I think this race is, there's a big advantage if you know the route. So for me, coming back again the next year, obviously that was the year I also joined Terrex. And I think I learned a lot from my teammates that year, how to train better, how to race smarter, how to fuel better. So everything kind of just got a little bit, I improved in kind of like in a general aspect of the racing scene. And last year, I guess I just managed to put the pieces all together. It was obviously it's the dream race. It's the race that everyone wants to win or even just like get into that top 10. It's always a huge honor and a big privilege to be in kind of that group of people. So for me, to get to that top position was a lot of hard work, 3 years of hard work. And I guess my dream came true.
Unbelievable performance. And winning on this stage is something that only an elite few people in history have been able to do. I mean, it's something that is remarkable for any athlete to achieve. Did it change your career in any way? Did it change sort of the way you see yourself or the way maybe other people see you or the amount of you're recognized in the streets here?
Not really, honestly. Yeah. I mean, a little bit. I've definitely noticed, I've had a lot more people reach out and wishing me luck and congratulating me when things go well. But mostly my life has been pretty similar. You always imagine like you win this big thing and all of a sudden you're like, your life changes, and it doesn't really work that way. I think especially trail running is still pretty small sport in the greater scheme of things. So my life hasn't become this wild ride, which I'm actually super grateful for. I'm very happy to live a quiet life.
So coming back to the fact that you're a South African living in France, speak about that. Because it feels to me like a big commitment, like you're so far away from home. And I think a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that this is a great place to pursue the career path that you've chosen, which is to be a high-level professional athlete competing at the highest level. So maybe say a few words about that, being so far away from home and how that looks practically.
Yeah. When I first came to Cham, it was like one of those places where I was like, wow, I really feel like I could live here one day. that was always like a faraway dream that I didn't ever think would happen. And now that I've kind of made that step and moved here, you know, it's never as easy as you imagine it to be. It's very disruptive. And I think that was one of the things that I had to overcome last year, is that huge change. Besides all the admin side of things, it's just that separation from your people and your community. Being so far away from my family, you know, it's never easy. Like my parents, I lived in Cape Town and they lived in Durban when I was in South Africa. So we were not close together either. But now it's just so far away. If I want to see them, it's at least 24 hours. And that's quite a scary prospect for me. I feel the distance now more than I did before, which is really hard. And it makes me quite sad sometimes, but I have to remind myself that I'm living my dream, and they're super proud of me and back me the whole way. It definitely comes with its challenges. I was actually joking. One of the things, like when I went to America, it always made me so surprised when someone was speaking English to me in their stores. Like they'd walk past and be like, "Oh, hi," or "Thank you," and I'd be like, "Whoa, they're speaking English. I understand them." I've gotten very used to not understanding what's going on around me, which is quite hard actually. And when you realize that you're so separated from your environment, so learning French is high up on my priority list.
I feel like there's a lot of expats living in this area now, English-speaking expats who are here for the same reason that you
totally.
are, so.
It makes it a lot easier, but I unfortunately don't live where there's a lot of English-speaking people, so I very much need to get on top of my French.
Yeah, well, you know, that could be another project that may take 3 years like OCC did. But.
Yeah, probably longer.
So talking about your season, as far as I know, you've only raced twice.
Yep.
You came over to the U.S., raced the Broken Arrow 46K. You won, an awesome performance there.
Thank you.
And then a few weeks ago, it seemed like you did your last big tune-up race over on the Italian side of Mont Blanc and La Tuile, about a marathon distance race. Talk about those two events, how they set you up for CCC on Friday.
Yeah, my season didn't go exactly according to plan. I had planned to race Transvolcania early in the season, which would have been kind of that step up that I was kind of looking for to prepare myself for this race, or to just see if I really wanted to. That was going to be like the deciding factor if I stepped up or not. That obviously didn't get to happen. I was dealing with a bit of a niggle at the beginning of the year, transitioning out of winter. I had to pivot, and Broken Arrow was a perfect opportunity to come to America. I got to stay afterwards and participate in Western States, which was an amazing, mind-blowing event as well. So Broken Arrow was super fun, challenging in its own way. And then La Tuile was much more challenging than I expected, but I also need to put into context of the training. You know, I had not tapered. It was kind of part of the build phase. So I'm super happy with how both of those races went. I think they went as well as I could have hoped for, considering the season that I've had so far. La Tuile was the perfect kind of building block towards this race that I'm doing on the weekend. And it's a beautiful area. Wow, it's one of those races that I've always wanted to do, because it just looked spectacular and it did not disappoint.
Yeah. So maybe double click on that. What you said was that Transvolcania was going to be the initial step up in distance that would give you the confirmation that you'd be ready for CCC, but you didn't do it. So what are you listening to internally, or what conversations are you having then to replace that experience at Transvolcania to make you feel confident that you are ready? Yeah.
I think Transvolcania was going to be like do I even like this distance? Do I like training for this? So I haven't had that. And in the process of now preparing for CCC, I've realized that I really do like the training. I've enjoyed getting out and exploring for many hours in a row, and doing that many times in a week.
Moving a little bit more slowly.
Yeah, well, what I've realized is that CCC isn't that much slower than OCC.
Not at your level. It's not,
which is quite frightening to think about, but I'm trying not to think too hard about that.
That's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to do an analysis on that. Keep going though. Sorry.
Yeah, well, don't worry, I've done it.
Okay.
And really, if I compare the two, I'm running maybe 20 minutes slower on my OCC, which is not that much slower.
Wow.
It's like it would be like 2 years ago, my OCC, and then just doubling that. which is a frightening prospect, but it's good. It's good.
Is that right?
It's
Wow.
about that. Yeah, I keep thinking about that on my long runs. I'm like, wow, that's quite a
So
thing.
the signal for you is like, am I enjoying this type of training?
Yeah.
And that gave you the
Yeah.
confidence that like, hey, if I'm enjoying this is a good signal for
Yeah.
me to pursue what I enjoy.
Yeah, totally. And I think also just the curiosity aspect, like I'm curious now about before, and I can say this with 100% confidence, I had no interest in 100Ks. I had no interest in doing anything outside of 50Ks. I thought that was the distance I enjoyed, and I still love that distance. Like I think it'll always be my default. But I've just been so curious about stepping up and just seeing what my body feels like and where my mind goes. That's been an interesting discovery in training, just like how my mind reacts to those big endurance days. It's big learning process for me, and I've learned a lot about myself in the process for sure.
Awesome. So talking more about your training, I had Tom Evans on my show a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about how he coaches both you and Ingvild. I'd love to hear you just say a few words about Tom as a coach, because obviously we all know him as the great champion athlete that he is. But one of the things that we talked about is that it makes perfect sense now that I know that he's, has that sort of coaching part of his career, I guess. So maybe you with firsthand experience, what's it like working with Tom as a coach?
Yeah, so I started working with Tom around the end of May. Like I had said, I was dealing with a niggle, and I felt like I was in this cycle of like doing really well and then getting injured and doing really well and then getting injured. So I really felt like I needed some guidance because I'd been mostly self-coaching before that. And Tom just felt like such a logical step for me. I had heard from Ingvild, we had been in Auburn together, and she was like, he's been really great for me. And at the same time, I was kind of considering CCC, and obviously he's a previous champion.
Yeah.
I know he had coached Ingvild as a previous champion, so I knew he had a recipe that worked.
Twice?
Yeah. Worked twice. So, I had heard really good things about him coaching, and I needed a bit more of a hands-on approach. I needed some accountability again, and he has given me everything that I've wanted in a coach. He gives me the tough love when I need it, which I think I was looking for. I'm the type of person that thrives off of like a bit of tough love sometimes.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I need a cheerleader. I need somebody who's like, hey, like you're awesome, even though you're not doing enough training.
I mean, it works. Yeah. Sometimes we need that, and sometimes we need a little bit of
career.
But yeah, he's been amazing, and I think he's adapted the recipe that he has really well to suit where I was and how I've progressed. I think he's been amazing, and I've learned a lot from him. I think he's more empathetic than we often see. I think he doesn't come across as, to the general public that way, but I've seen his soft side. He really cares. And I've seen that in his coaching as well. He's super reactive. He's always on top of it. And he's always understanding when,
it's like I said, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I can imagine him when he's in his 50s, like coaching a bunch of the top athletes, just by virtue of his character and the way he thinks about the sport.
Yeah. Super analytical, and it's awesome. Like, I love that.
Can you share any like practical stuff about what you guys have been working on? Because you don't post a lot on Strava, neither does Tom. And so, obviously you don't need to reveal any proprietary information here, but I'm sure the fans would love to hear sort of like what the emphasis is. What were you specifically working on to set yourself up for success?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, there's no secret recipe. There's no like magic bullet workout that's going to change anything. But, and honestly, my training hasn't changed that much from what I was doing last year. There's just been like one or two things that have slightly changed. But we've really focused on getting me efficient uphill. So we've done some quite long intervals, longer than I've done before. And obviously then some shorter stuff. And we've also done a couple, we experimented a bit with double threshold days. I'm not sure I loved those. So I think we did it for 2 or 3 weeks. And then I was like, actually, no, I prefer splitting them up. But yeah, I think the focus
Why was that, out of curiosity? Just it felt like an overload of fatigue or something?
I think I just didn't I feel like I wasn't getting the most out of either session, because the first session I was like, oh, I better hold back a bit because I've got one more in the afternoon. And then the afternoon one, I was like tired, so I wasn't getting the most out of it either. So I see the value in it. I just don't think it worked for me in this situation. I'd be very curious to go back to it, but not in this build-up. I just felt a bit fragile and maybe not ready for that yet. But yeah, like if you look at CCC or UTMB or any of these races, you spend the majority of your time climbing. That's where mostly, that's where a lot of your time is spent. So we wanted to be as efficient as possible there. I know I can run downhill. So it was about becoming as efficient as possible at threshold, whether that's flat or uphill. And yeah, I guess that was a combination of uphill workouts, couple flat workouts, a couple like long tempo sessions at race pace on like similar terrain. And
Simple as that.
Yeah, super simple, nothing crazy.
All right. Anybody out there can now copy the Tom Evans training philosophy.
Yeah.
That's the truth though, isn't it? It's like, it's nothing fancy. It's just consistency and putting the right pieces together at the right time.
Yeah, I think that's also what I appreciated about his training. Like I never had one day that was like 10 hours out on the mountain. It was like, cool. I'd rather you did like 2 back-to-back 4-hour days. That to me makes more sense. It's better on your body, especially, coming out of injury. It's a safer way for me to do that and still get the volume that I need. So yeah, I'm super happy with how this process has been.
So one of those pieces to put together is like the mindset thing. And I'm sure that's something that you're thinking about or that you've wrestled with in the last couple months as you've been approaching this big new chapter of your career. I'm sure people would love to hear you just talk about jumping up in distance and the mindset associated with that, because you can see it from one of two angles, right? Like OCC, you've done it 3 times. Like if you went back there, you may not have the same motivation. Similarly, like coming up to CCC, you have sort of fresh eyes, but you could also feel inexperienced and intimidated. So where do you sit along that spectrum?
Honestly, like both of those. It's like tick, tick. Going back to OCC wasn't really, I had no draw to it this year. There was no motivation to train for that. And to be honest, I just didn't know how to improve. I feel like I had the day that I could ever, like the best day I could ever have last year. So for me to go back, I was like overwhelmingly intimidated by the idea. And CCC, I mean, I know I'm not experienced. The longest I've run is OCC. Like it's the longest race I've ever done. So it's a huge step up for me. But I think the overwhelming emotion that I feel towards it is just curious. And I know that I'm inexperienced, but I also know that I've had really good teachers and guides along the way. Like Tom is the perfect example of that. I've got Peter in the team who's also won this race. I've got Ingvild in the team who's also won this race. So I feel like I've got a lot of knowledge that I can draw on, which makes me feel less worried about how inexperienced I am. And I guess that's why I'm sitting here just being like quite calm and just curious. But mentally, there's been some real low points in my training, and I do worry that that's going to happen to me on race day, because if it does, it's there's going to be tears, and tears are not good to run with. It makes it real hard.
It happens.
Yeah, so controlling that, going to try and channel my inner, I don't know, zen.
Yeah. Well, you seem very calm now, and I think that's such a good signal of like being ready. You've mentioned Ingvild a couple of times, so maybe just say a few words about what it was like to crew for her at Western States.
Yeah.
And also would love to hear if she has shared any specific words of wisdom for you. I know she's sort of injured right now. She's not going to be racing this week.
Yeah.
So anything about Ingvild that you think would be interesting?
Yeah. I mean, being with her at Western States was probably one of the most inspirational things that I could ever have been a part of. She ran such a smart race, and obviously having run like the fastest Western States debut ever is insane, and to have been a small part of that was a huge privilege. But just to see her, she's a perfect example of someone who was really calm and just like, she was in pain, she was hurting, she was pushing really hard, but she never showed it. And it was never like emotional. It was just like, okay, this is where I am, this is how I'm going to deal with it. And that was really great to see firsthand. In terms of this race, she had a first experience here that was pretty hard. So I think her biggest advice has just been, you know, don't kill yourself in that first section. I think it's really easy to overrun that first section.
It's so true.
Yeah. Just
both UTMB and CCC are just speed traps.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, we at least have like a really gnarly climb right at the start, but after that, it's running for 20 Ks, and I think you can you could really blow your legs on that. So for me, it's going to be really running within myself there, and then the race starts after Grand Cofferet.
How much time have you spent on the course?
Probably not as much as I would have liked. I think I took for granted that it was so close. So I was like, I'll go next weekend. Wow, I'll go another time. And then it was UTMB, and I was like, oh, shoot.
You think that's a good thing or a bad thing? Because, you know, I've been just like flipping through everybody's Stravas over the last couple of weeks as I've been getting ready for what we're going to be doing this week. And so many people are just lapping the course.
Honestly, I'm quite happy to have left some bits that I don't know. I think for me at least, it's going to give that like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing here. That's kind of cool. Let's like be present and focused. I probably would have liked to have seen, because the only section I haven't seen is the Grand Cofferet to Champelac. The rest of it I know, so I haven't really recce'd this back section, and I've only done that first climb twice. So I'm probably not as experienced on this route as I maybe would have liked, but honestly, I'm not worried about it, because I do think it adds a level of intrigue and interest to the course where, you know, if you've done it a million times, yes, maybe you've got some advantage in knowing, I don't know, the best lines or when exactly you want to fuel. But it doesn't seem to, it hasn't bothered me up until this point.
Awesome. Well, thanks for spending time with us. I was thinking about closing all of our interviews with the same question for everybody, which is just, who is going to be crewing for you? Why that person, and what has that person meant to you in your career?
Okay. Easy. Bastian, my partner, he will be my chief crew. My mom is going to be here as well.
He's like got to be one of the most coveted crew chiefs out there.
I feel very privileged that
he's been on Team Walmsley at least a couple times, hasn't he?
He's been on Team Walmsley for a couple of years now, and for Western States and UTMB. So I feel very privileged that he's decided to stick with me this year. I might have had a word with him if that was not the case. But no, I'm very happy that he's with me. Like you say, he's so experienced. He keeps, I mean, we've actually got a time set aside tomorrow to like practice our aid stations. So hopefully we'll have that nailed.
That's what it's coming to now. It's like actually practicing.
F1 in, out, knows where to put the things. I'm just sitting there stuffing my face with rice.
Yeah.
But yeah, he'll be my crew, obviously my partner. So to have him there, especially on my first 100K races, it probably means more than anything for the whole day. It's like, that's the one thing that I'm really just so happy about. And obviously having my mom here for her to experience UTMB for the first time is quite exciting.
It's going to blow her mind.
Yeah.
Well, Toni, good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
We wish you nothing but the best. Thanks for spending some time with us, and we'll see you out on the course.
Thank you so much for having me, and good luck this week.